Hi everyone, it's Sarah Altair with Actation Now, and you're at the Midweek Zap. And our guest this week is Ronnie Bincer. Bincer, I'm so sorry, Ronnie.
No worries.
Ronnie
No.
Bincer depends on which language I'm speaking. Um, and Ronnie is definitely the Hangout Master. Ronnie is the Hangout helper, and he also has a group which is just fantastic, Hangout Mastery. Anything else you want to add, Ronnie, to your long list of achievements?
Achievements are having a good time with Hangouts. This is the latest for me. Prior to that, I did a bunch of different things. The easiest track to follow, I guess, would be I was a musician in college, and then I turned into a computer nerd, and that computer nerdum turned me into a trainer where I trained people how to do graphics programs, and then eventually I moved into a failed effort to be a realtor, not a realtor, but a real estate investor,
Oh,
and that messed up pretty good. And then eventually I turned into an SEO person, search engine optimization, which focused on video SEO. And then Google Plus came around, and I jumped all over the Hangout thing because it made sense to me.
great, thank you. And it's a varied career. I like that. Gives you a lot of life experience. Ronnie, before we go, we have some questions from the audience, which is really terrific. I love that about HOAs. They can be extremely interactive. But first, I want to start out with, what do you think is the most innovative way HOAs have been used so far?
The most innovative way. You didn't tell me you were going to ask me that one. Okay, so the most innovative way. I think probably still to this day, there was one a long time ago that was showing an operation, a live operation in a medical, an operation on a human. So that to me was, I guess, probably the most innovative, at least from my perspective right now. I may think of some others, but that was probably the key one for me.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. I remember the first live operation I saw on television in the 50s. It was pretty awesome. Um, okay, we have a couple of questions from the audience. First is from Krishna D. Oh, whoops, I pulled up the wrong one. Sorry. All right, Krishna Day. Question: what is the one thing in Ronnie's toolbox that he could not do without to host a successful hangout?
And I understand the form of the question, like find the most valuable thing, and I don't have an answer for that. I don't have just one thing, unfortunately. I would say, and I wouldn't even call it a toolbox thing, so I might be totally missing the point of the question, but here's what I think is probably most important is good light and good sound and good internet connection. I almost made up a word, internection, which is internet and connection. So good upload speed, good light, and good sound, I think what makes every Hangout more uh, useful for people because they're not worried about, I can't really see that, or it doesn't sound good. Those kind of things just disappear, and you can get more into the actual content. So that's the techie side of things, I think, from a toolbox perspective. There's other tools, it's pretty hard to do without the lower third, this thing down here. I use it for various things like bringing up other graphics, or if I'm doing some training. In the past, I used to use it to point to bullet points. I'd put right up there on the screen and leave them there while we were talking. Um, as a trainer, I guess with those other things aside, I know this is more than one, isn't it? As a trainer, I would say Screenshare is incredibly important for me because what I do is I show screenshots or live activity from something that's on a computer to talk about how this is working and how you do certain things. So out of all the tools, I suppose, that are available on the left side, I think for me, Screenshare is probably the most important one.
Okay, great answer. And then from Terry Lee Britton, we have yet another question. Terry says, I imagine that to simply use HOAs as a screencast recording tool, you can employ http colon
Yeah,
bit.ly.
that's a link that I made for people to use. It's just an easy way to start what's called an eventless Hangout On Air. It's just a standalone Hangout On Air that's not connected to anything.
And he continues on, any caveats or nifty tools for just that kind of focus? I suppose Google Slides, Google Docs, and Google Sheets are still somewhat useful, but any apps out there?
So as a screencast recording tool, meaning we're making recordings of what we can grab, just like with screen sharing. I think that's the point of the question here. Are there any caveats or nifty tools for that kind of thing? Probably the most important thing is realizing that when you do screen shares, I guess this ties into the last comment, doesn't it? When you do screen shares, the easiest thing to remember and make it always work is if you can make your window that you're sharing movable. If you are able to see a title bar, something you can pick it up and drag it around on the screen, then it's likely you're going to be able to share it with the screen share tool. If you don't, in other words, it's full screen, there's a very good chance screen share is not going to work for you. And so the key is try to make whatever tools you're using that you're sharing full screen, I'm sorry, not full screen, but make them so they're movable, and then screen share works. So with that said, any tool that allows you to resize it or reshape it such that you're able to see a title bar and you can drag it around is going to work with screen share. So when Terry asks, I know Terry is very in-depth with a lot of these things. When he talks about any apps out there, there's a lot of different applications starting to come up that allow you to do special things with your Hangouts. Some of them are mainly aimed towards marketers and people that are trying to gather or build email lists. They're what I call Hangout wrappers. In other words, they go around the main tool, which is your Hangout On Air broadcast, but allows you to set things up ahead of time and gather information from clients like emails, as well as take polls or do webinar-ish type of things. They don't really add a lot to the screen share functions, but there's one in particular that I kind of like. It's called Webinar Jam that allows us to bring in video in a more official way. In other words, there's a thing they call hybrid videos. And so that's kind of a neat thing when it works. It's been, struggles here and there, like any new tool, where you can actually bring in a video that you had recorded ahead of time and play that as part of your webinar. And the way they get around the copyright concern, which is still a problem, is the live stream doesn't show it. It's built into their own little player, per se, where you register and you get in there. And so as a result, their player swaps out what's going on from the Hangout and now replaces it with the video, and when you're done you have to press some buttons, then it brings back the Hangout again. So it's got its own quirks like all these things do, but I think that probably hopefully answers Terry's question about screen casting and creating videos using this tool.
Great, thank you. That was a very detailed answer, Ronnie, as you always do. I just wanted to, I kind of went around looking at HOAs this week, knowing that we were going to be here today, and here's some of the things I found, the ways that people are using HOAs. There are contests where people are on the HOA and they get involved in the contest on the HOA. There are goods for sale, from bicycles to there's a new hangout that actually is like a shopping hangout, and different people come on and post their wares and talk about them. Recently I've seen charity funding with live walk activities. I thought that was a great way to use it. Hangouts. People do their own music hangouts, and then there's also music concerts that Christine DeGraff and Dennis Deuce are doing on a weekly basis, music concerts. Then also from the business side, private Hangouts on Air with specific clients, and instructional private Hangouts on Air where you can bring in more than one specific client. And also from a company perspective, intra-company Hangouts on Air where teams get together and talk. And then one of my favorites was NFL Draft. Did Hangouts on Air for their draftees. I thought that was just totally cool.
Yeah.
And actually, the U.S. military had a drone flight Hangout on Air, what the drone saw Hangout on Air. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Andrew Hatchett, the twice a week, his group does gaming and Hangouts for Air. So people are coming up with some really innovative ways of using Hangouts, and I really like that. And one of the points of the Midweek Zap is to get people thinking about ways they can use the different Google tools that are available to really boost their business. So Ronnie, my question for you is, do you have any other ideas about what people could be thinking about or how to go about thinking about creative ideas for using Hangouts on Air?
Sure. Probably the thought process you might want to go through is, if I could make my own TV show, what would I do? How could I do it? And just sort of brainstorm from there, because what's been limiting in the past is the money. You just couldn't afford necessarily to run a TV show or to make a commercial the way you wanted to. But now you can do it. I mean, this thing I'm going to hold up right here, this is my cell phone, right? This cell phone, because it's got a camera here, can be my remote camera. So I could have people take that, and let's say I have a lawn care business, just use it as an easy example. I could be in my studio or in my office talking about things, and I could bring in two of my people that are out in the field with their cell phones into the Hangout, and we can talk about, we just got a call about an issue with ants here, and can you get a little closer to the ants, Joe? And Joe can take his camera and go right down. And the other one's looking at another problem with bees, okay? And so even though you're not there, you can guide it and actually be the director of the show with people remotely. So the ability to bring in remote broadcasts through your cell phone, I think, is phenomenal. We did some of that with South by Southwest in Austin. This is the second year I've done that, in 2014 and 2013. And then not too long ago, we did another one with a charity called Champions for Kids. There it is. I almost thought I had lost it there. Champions for Kids. It was at Razor Fest in Arkansas. And we had a team working with Jim, who was the man on the street doing the interviews, in the stadium, and we had a team of people from behind the scenes running the show. So, and this is all very, very inexpensive to do, whereas if you were to try to figure out how to do that with your business or your concept without the option of Hangouts, it gets expensive really, really fast. So to me, I think that's one of the keys, is think of it as if you have your own TV network. What would you like? Just imagine it and then make it happen.
Oh, that's a really great way of visualizing it for people who want to use HOAs, but they're not sure exactly how they want to use it for their business. And I think everyone can relate to TV shows.
Yeah.
And then we have another comment from Terry. Let me bring it up. Addressing Ronnie's suggestion to keep the window you will share movable so you can select it, I keep my windows 1280 by 720, the optimum size, using Brian Apps.
brianapps.net/sizer.
Yeah. It allows you to set any window to a specific size by right-clicking on its top edge. Wow, that's a great tip, Terry. Thank you very much. Anything to add to that, Ronnie?
I might imagine, but I don't know this for sure, that that's probably specifically towards the PC realm rather than the Mac world, but it might work on the Mac as well. I just don't know. I've not tried that sizer thing. There used to be programs a long time ago that I would use to try to keep the size, something like that. I actually make, this is going to sound silly, it's sort of low tech. I made a graphic that's 1280 by 720. And the reason why we choose that size is that's the resolution or the size of a high HD video. So it's just a good size to start with. I made a graphic that is that size, and I open it up. So as a reference point, and I can move it anywhere on the screen if I want, and then I take my movable item, which I'm going to screen share, and put it so that it fits on top of that, and it gives me the visual idea of what it needs to be. So that's how I go about keeping that size in mind as I'm doing screen shares when I can.
Okay, that was a great technical tip. And Lee Rickler had a couple of questions. One was Hangouts On Air, and yes, they're happening. But also Lee said, and I have to agree, I'd say the most important part is an interactive audience. The rest you can change and adapt.
Yeah, I think one of the beauties of Hangouts On Air is, one of the parts that makes it different than almost anything else is the fact that it's interactive. You could make it interactive like we're doing now. We're bringing live comments right onto the screen. Other people like to bring people right into the film strip and just let them be part of the show, and then they leave, and then you bring somebody else in. I think that's neat and interesting, but it's also fraught with problems, because if you don't know these people and you haven't tested or vetted them ahead of time, you really don't know what their situation is going to be and whether the quality of the video is going to be very distracting. So it tends to get a little bit distracting away from what they're trying to say or bring in. So if we bring someone's comment, like this one right here, I'll bring up Lee's about shopouts. It's actually called Shoppable Hangouts. It's a technical name, but it allows me to bring that right up there on the screen. His name, as well as the text that he's written, is right there. That, to me, changes the game, because that ability to bring somebody's comment into the show and have it recorded on the video is awesome, because it allows Lee to just have stepped onto the stage. He had his moment there with his comment, and that means hopefully he enjoyed that, and he gets this little like, cool, my stuff was on the screen. And you can do that over and over and over with all the different people that are involved in interacting. You have turned your show into a interactive show. And this reminds me way back early days of Hangouts On Air. There is a lady that I followed, and I still do. Her name is Sarah Hill, and she coined the phrase, I want to be able to yell at the TV, and the TV is going to yell back. Okay, so this is like real life. People can say, ah, and then we can answer right back, whoa, and then you go.
And we have one of those from Terry, and it's PC only for the sizer.
Right. So great. We've already got our answer. I asked a question, or he asked a question. I replied with another question. He gave us the answer, and there we go. Really, really cool how this stuff works. Now, Skype, which is sort of a precursor to what we're doing here, the program Skype allows you to have one-on-one conversations, or now they're letting you have group conversations, but the broadcast capability and the automatic turning it into a video that's recorded for you in a place like YouTube is only available in this world that we have called Hangouts.
And one more thing, we even get to joke. Here's from Terry, fraught with peril. I love the interaction of Hangouts. I really do. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen, actually, there was a while ago when I submitted a plan. I forget what, it was for some competition. Unique uses of Hangout. I didn't even remember what it is now, but the idea was to bring lots of people into a show and let that last maybe a 1 or 2 hour long thing, and bring lots of people in, let them talk about something, and then move them on and have another person come in and just keep cycling through. And the plan in my head was I needed 2 Hangouts to do that. I needed one that had assistants, people in there that were vetting the people, making sure their camera was working, their microphone was working, that the lighting was okay. Once they're okay, then they give me a note in the live show that we're going to send one more over. Here's a link, and then or I say yes, I'm ready, and then they come on in. So the idea of coordinating two Hangouts simultaneously, one would be the vetting room, and the other one would be the live room, was something that I wanted to play with. That would have been unique, but I never did it. They didn't. I think it was for a competition to go to some social media thing, and it wasn't chosen out of the top 10 or something that they were going to evaluate, so I just moved on. But that's kind of a neat concept to try sometime.
I think that's a really cool concept, and it would overcome the problem that you were mentioning earlier about bringing people in on the spot, and yet they haven't been vetted for just some of the technical things that are required to be on what is called the film strip down there with the various people. And it can cause problems for your HOA. It stops it essentially, and it stops the audience engagement while you're fussing around with the technical stuff.
Yeah.
And
now I've seen Huntington. I think it was Huffington Post. I believe had a vetting room, the same idea, but then I think they decided it was just too much hassle, and so they just went live. And some of the things. Now this may have changed since I think they changed who's running it. Matt Rappaport now does it, but before that, I remember watching some, and because I help people with Hangouts. I was like, I can't handle this, because they just were having all these problems with echoes. Like there was a video playing in the background, right, of the very Hangout, and they're wondering, where's the sound coming from? Is it from you? And they don't know. And the camera was messed up, and so all these little things that could and should have been worked through before they ever got live weren't, and they were part of the live broadcast. And that to me, like you're saying, really distracts, I think, from the main activity you're trying to do.
It does. It distracts a lot, and we've got some more funny feedback here from Lee. Thanks for the exposure. I'd like to thank my manager and my friends. I'm here all week.
That's great.
And then we have another question, Ronnie, and that is from Lisa Vantino. I did it Italian way, so I hope I said it correctly. I am on the board of a nonprofit and have suggested a Hangout as an option once in a while instead of early morning meetings. A very lackluster response. The only one interested is in her late 70s. How do I get them interested? That's a great question. How do you get people interested in your Hangouts?
It is a great question, and what she's asking for is, how do we change, instead of meeting face to face and everybody dealing with parking and driving and babysitters and time commitment, the kind of thing, how can we do this? I'm filling in the blanks now a little bit. How can we do this potentially more efficiently? And I think it's a phenomenal way to, let's say you have 3 meetings a month, you could make one of them meet in person, the other 2 could be through Hangouts. And once people start to do it, it's not hard to sell. They just have to get them started. And so what I would do is I would reach out to them and say, hey, I'd like to just have a quick meeting with just you. Would you mind us trying this Hangout thing? You do it. There's 10 people you're meeting with. You do them one at a time, just one by one, so they feel very comfortable because it's just you and them. They're not embarrassed with the other person that's in their meeting room. Just you and them, and you have a meeting. And then you might meet with 2 or 3 of them, and then all of a sudden they're going to say, you know what? Why are we meeting here when we could just do it through this Hangout thing that we did our other meetings with? And they'll be the ones helping push it. I would think that would happen.
And Lee also had, thank you, audience, you're just great today, has a response as well, very similar. Lisa Vancino, I'd say show them, set something up that'll show the ease of use, etc. And I think Ronnie's suggestion of doing it one-on-one is just a great way to introduce them one by one, and there's no shyness or who else is watching and what if I screw up. All of that doesn't matter because you're just doing it one-on-one.
Right. And there's also, this is going to be a little bit fancier, but you could try it as another transitionary point to getting people to adopt it. You could say, I met with Zara, and Zara can't make it in today, but she'd like to be part of the meeting. So I brought a computer, and I'm going to open it up right here, and I'm going to let Zara be in the meeting. This is her chair. We put the laptop right there, and she's now able to hear and interact with everything that's going on. And so there's Zara over there. That's her. That's the computer. That's Zara. See her face? There she is. And so that's just another, but you have to have someone that you partner with to do that. So you have to convince at least one person to stay home that day. But I think that would be another way to start getting the idea when you're having meetings like that, to bring in the capability of these live interactive video calls. Which, by the way, another neat idea is conferences, conventions. If you have a panel of people, let's say talking about a topic, and there's 3 people that are local, but you want to bring in 2 more from across the globe, we can do that now very easily. You don't have to fly them in. They don't have to deal with hotels and taxis and traffic and eating and things like that. You can tell I used to travel for a living. Okay, they can come in from their office or the beach or wherever they happen to be and attend and be part of the conference right there on the screen. You can do a projection, and they can be seated. You can have 3 people on stools, and then the big screen right behind them with 2 more people that are coming from somewhere else in the world, and they can add value incredibly to the convention. And think about this too: the money that's saved with transportation costs can be spent on their speaker fees, and the net result is you either get better speakers or you get it costs you less to do what you needed to do.
So we're getting lots of feedback here, Ronnie, so let me just share a couple here. Terry, once again, Lisa Vancino, Ronnie said it. Mention gas, traffic, parking, travel time, and drinking coffee at home. Meet with 1 or 2 at a time. Indeed, get them used to it slowly. Ronnie is a genius. Well, Ronnie is a genius, so we're really honored to have him here on the Midweek Zap. Thanks, Terry.
Thanks, Terry, yes.
And Lisa wants to give you a thank you as well, Ronnie. Great idea, Ronnie Bincer, one-on-one, and all for the exact reasons you mentioned.
Great. I hope it works out, and let us know, because I know that Lisa's part of the mastery, and she can let us know on the inside there. And when I say on the inside, for those that aren't part of the mastery, we have a group of people that are helping each other learn and use these Hangouts in incredibly wonderful ways, and I'm really, really happy and pleased about how helpful that particular community is, one towards each other. It's not just me, but everybody's helping each other. Really, really cool.
It is really, really cool. I'm part of it. It's just fantastic, and I have nothing but good things to say about Ronnie, and I'm so honored he's here today on the Midweek Zap. Ronnie, we're coming close to the end of our time, and I had one question that I wanted to ask you, and I know you're in touch with Google. And if you had your way and your vision and it could happen, what would you like to see from Google Plus to help implement Hangouts on Air?
What I would like to see is I'd like some clarity on 2 specific areas. I'm actually working on this too. One area is copyright. I want it much more clear so that we can understand what's okay to do and what's not. Meaning, can we bring our own videos into a Hangout and let those play without worrying about the content ID strike? So it's copyright. It's a technical thing, and it's an issue. And I'd like that resolved. I'd like it just to be real clear, yes, you can do this, no, you can't. And then we work with that, rather than the guessing that we're in the process of right now. The other has to do with, I think, the big part of the future that a lot of people are poking at is monetizing Hangouts. In other words, maybe getting a sponsor, some company that would love to have you talk about what they do while you're in your show and say, this show is sponsored by blah, 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 and here's why I like to use their thing, and this is what it does for me, and you really need one. Here's how you find it, that kind of thing. What's legal and what's not is still, again, one of those things that's right in the grayish area, and I would love to be getting more clarity on that as well. And again, not so we can skirt it or get around it, but just so we can know what's okay and what's not, and then we can work within that structure. And honestly, I'm working on getting those answers. It's just taking a bit of a time because they don't like to say we're lawyers. They're not lawyers, but they won't say anything because they're not lawyers and that kind of thing. So I'm having to work through the stages and try to figure it out. Then there's a whole bunch of other techie things that I'd love to see, but I think those two are the primary ones, and they're not even all that technical. They're more systemic or what would be the right word? It's legal. It's usually something to do with the legality of it.
Oh, thank you. And I, for one, and I know most of the audience here today, really cheer you on for your efforts on dealing with all of that, because, boy, once you start getting into the legal world, it's ask a question, wait, get sideways answers, more sideways answers, ask another question for clarification, and you're doing all that, and we all benefit. All of us who are involved in Hangouts on Air for any reason, we all benefit from that, and that's why, Ronnie, you are the master, and I just really want to thank you. Thank you so much for being here today and interacting with our super audience and sharing your thoughts. And thank you, audience, for being here today, and we will see you next week. I'm not sure who my guest is next week. I had someone lined up, and I haven't heard back from them, so I may be scrambling. Anyway, thank you all for being here. You've been a great audience, and thank you, Ronnie. Let's say goodbye.
You're quite welcome. It's been a pleasure, and I will, if there's other missing questions that haven't answered, I'll get to them in the events.
Super. Thank you.